Hi, I'm Robby Johnson, and today I'm going to be going over how to create a lighting scenario in an interior using ambient occlusion. I've made a couple of blank layers with layer masks so I can control-click them to quickly get to selections I feel like I'll be coming back to. The overall idea right now is to work general to specific. Start with the larger parts of the room and work your way down. I'll be breaking that rule throughout the image, but it's a good thing to keep in mind. I'll first start by loosely hitting areas where the larger planes meet. When I'm using this method, my end goal is to have basic lighting that I will eventually color and hand paint on top of. Since there's plenty of work to be done after this, I don't bother being very precise with the lasso tool. I think it saves time in the long run and makes it a much more enjoyable process to not worry about precise selections this early. Don't worry about the smaller gaps between the planes. Most of the time when working on these stages, I'll keep open references of 3D ambient occlusion renders. When choosing how light or dark to make any given area, the first thoughts are more intuitive to imagine things like, well, since this area is deep in a corner, not a lot of light will get here, or this large flat plane is in the center of the room, it may not be occluded at all. I'm no expert on exactly how ambient occlusion works, and I would suggest Googling it if you're unsure. But the very simplest way I can explain it is that it is where a plane or form darkens as it comes close to contacting another plane, creating an area where bounce light has a difficult time reaching. If I find myself unsure how dark an area would be, I imagine a perpendicular line coming from the plane, and I take into account how far it would stretch before it reached another object. If the object is close, it would create more occlusion. It also depends on how large the object is and what angle the object is facing. I'm not making any calculations in my head, just making guesses based on references and previous attempts. Another thing to keep in mind is that when you imagine planes meeting, avoid making the occlusion a linear gradient. Think of the occlusion getting exponentially darker as the planes come closer together. I would suggest not doing what I'm doing here and go back and forth around your image, paying actual attention to your references and trying to fix your mistakes. For the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and move into adding a light source. I'm about to add a light source coming from the left in the room on the other side of the archway. Before plotting out the light source, I'm filling a normal layer with black, and I lower the opacity to darken the room overall. Adding a light to a mostly white room wouldn't be too exciting. Using the polygonal lasso tool, I'm guessing where light would end up hitting as it comes through the archway. Again, a situation that would also benefit from some planning and careful thought. Once I get something close to what I want, I'll fill it with white. Once I've gotten to a point where I'm ready to move forward, I'll use a smudge brush to soften the edges of the shadow, softening more as the shadow gets further away from the object casting it. Then I duplicate the light layer and hide the old one. I'll go back to that copy in case that I really screw up further down the road or I need to control-click it to select my light area. I'll make a mask on the visible light layer and start airbrushing out the areas that are further away from the light source, or areas that I think would get less light. I changed the light layer to overlay as it should allow more of the occlusion layer to show from underneath. I duplicated the light layer to increase the intensity and remove some of the excess I didn't want. To add a little atmosphere, I paint in some bloom coming from different areas. Now I'm going to airbrush a softer and dimmer light source coming from the ceiling between the two arches, softly adding in the area on the wall being hit, and then the top plane of the object underneath. I'm making selections of where I think the extruded pieces on the wall would cast a shadow, and then I delete it. I made a selection earlier of the floor plane, and I'm going to use that to darken the floor to create more separation between it and the walls. Then, while keeping that selection, I'll airbrush in some reflections on the floor. To keep it simple, I'll match the values on the floor with what's above it, painting light underneath the light areas and dark underneath the dark areas. I hold Shift to brush directly up and down. And just to show that everything up to this point is editable, I'll go back and change the color of the light to blue. Also, now if you wanted to go back and change the occlusion layers to multiply, you could add color and texture underneath it. Thanks for watching the video. I hope it was helpful. Please check out powerhouseanimation.com for more pro tips.